What's up guys, Card Protagonist here. Today I'll be doing an updated deck profile on Magic World Mystic Knights deck. With the Climax Booster Ultimate Unite and the previous set, Perfected Time Ruler, Mystic Knights has gotten some powerful upgrades that keep the deck competitively relevant. The brand new Sing and Asagi are new counter monsters that quick core themselves over Mystic Knights, giving them extra attacks or giving the fighter extra survivability. Now that's awesome balance. This also makes Mystic Knight a little more unpredictable compared to its predecessor. So without further ado, let's jump into the deck profile. For the buddy, I'll be using Flaming Red Prison of Love, Sing. He is Sing's latest form, which is able to call himself from the hand during your turn or your opponent's turn, giving you extra attack or survivability as previously mentioned. And the reason why I made him the buddy is because I play 4 copies of it in the deck, and it's an excellent card that's able to come down during your turn or during the opponent's turn, which makes this card extremely live, giving you that buddy gift. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the deck profile. First up, 2 copies of Sing from the previous extra booster. As you guys know, all Sing give 3k attack and defense whenever it casts a fire spell during your opponent's turn or your turn. Its power gaining ability is very important in the deck because this is what makes Mystic Knight gain its abilities. So the main reason why we play 2 copies of this guy is because all Mystic Knights with 9k or greater power on the field will gain 1 extra critical and 1 penetrate, and their damage cannot be reduced if they are attacking alone. The extra penetrate and crit is really handy because we play 2 copies of the original Sing, which gives all cards double attack when you hit 9k. So similar to all Sings, this card provides 3k attack and 3k defense to all cards on the field whenever it casts a fire spell. And its original form is mainly for you to gain that double attack buff during your battle phase. It doesn't matter whether you leave the field after you gain its ability during the start of the battle phase, because once you gain that ability, even if you remove him, the double attack buff still lingers, so whenever you need to call on top of him gain double attack, all cards on the field gain double attack. So incoming cards that you'll be calling, even by spells or its effect, all gain double attack, which gives us the extreme aggression. Really good, because since it's a size 1 rush deck, you'll be calling 3 units on the field and spamming calls later with card effects. 2 of each of the Sings. The reason why I only play 2 copies is because I want to make space for some cards in my deck. And we do have a searcher that helps get us our Sing whichever we need. So 2 of each works fine in the deck. Now finally time for the brand new card of the deck. Prison of Love Sing. So basically this is the new version of Sing, and the reason why we play 4 copies of this guy is because this guy can call itself repeatedly and its ability is not once per turn, which gives us an extra aggression, extra attacks. Really awesome card in my opinion. So it has the core cost of paying 2 gauge and putting top 2 cards of deck into its soul. So similar to all Sings in the previous forms, when you cast a fire spell, all Mystic Knights on the field gain was 3k attack and 3k defense. Pretty standard, and its counter ability is what makes this card work. So you can counter and call this card on top of a Mystic Knight monster with 9k or attack greater. So it's really important that you buff up your Mystic Knights on the field, which you'll be guaranteed to buffs if you have any of the Sings on the field. Another cool thing about this ability is, when you activate this ability, you do not need to pay its core cost, because you call this on top of a Mystic Knight monster with 9k or greater on your field without paying its core cost. So technically its pay 2 gauge is free. But of course the downside is you do not gain an extra 2 soul. How I use this card is mostly during the attack phase, where I just attack, and after the units being rested, I just call it over and resend and give it the extra double attack. So playing 4 copies in the deck is great because it will never be a dead card in your hand. During your turn, you give extra attacks. During your opponent's turn, it gives you extra soul because you basically can call over each other. And it also has a really cool counter attack, which means your opponent will be minusing whenever it attacks it. My favorite ability is final ability. During each player's attack phase, whenever you cast a fire spell, deal 1 damage and heal 1 life. This is really good because I have a ton of fire spells in my deck. So dealing cheap damage to my opponents to bring them to little is really good. On average, I actually deal 6 burn damage with this deck. And after that, I just need to swing a couple of times and my opponent's dead. And with Mystic Knight's aggression, this is really easy to pull off. So 4 copies of Prison of Love Sing, because you can never get enough of this card in your hand. So 1 tag-in copy of Asagi's advanced form. Sing is not the only one who got an upgrade. Asagi, one of my favorite units in Mystic Knights, has got an upgrade as well. I only play 1 copy of her is because I really want to use her in the deck profile. And I do know that Sing does pull off its abilities well enough for you to kill the opponent. And Asagi is just there to gain you extra pluses, which isn't really necessary since you'll be one turn killing opponents. So she has the core cost of putting on top of Mystic Knight monsters on the field and pay 1 gauge. So unlike the new Sing, you can't just call it onto the field. You gotta put it on top of a Mystic monster and pay 1 gauge. So practically you could evolve your previous Asagi after using a skill to plus. Just call it over. But she also has a counter ability allowing you to call during your opponent's turn or your turn. Counter ability, you may call this card from your hand by paying its core cost if you cast a fire spell during its turn. So practically it gives you extra attack, extra tankiness, really cool. So when this card attacks, if this card is 9k or greater, put the top card of the deck into the gauge, gain 1 life and draw a card. So it's pretty much similar to my Star Dragon was cooked. So it's a really good card because it has double attack with Sync's buff during your attack phase. I just play one copy because I really want to explain her from the newer set. Next, 4 copy of OG Asagi. When she enters the field, you have another Mystic Knight you can charge and draw. Really simple card, and it's not once per turn, so you can spam call. With Time Dragons being a thing, there's a very little loyalty in the game right now. But do be careful, of course. If you have multiple copies, do not try to spam call. Make sure you have your bot set up before spam calling. But nonetheless, she gives you extra charge and draw. A really good card overall and isn't really dead. So 4 copies is fine because it does speed up your deck a lot. Now, 2 copies of Knight, I highly recommend 3 because Time Dragons is a thing. This deck does not really have a problem against Time Dragon because there are tons of spells that help you protect against Time Dragons. And your potential to OTK is really high as well. And you do have a lot of nullifies in Magic World. While this card on the field, all missing knights on the field cannot be destroyed and their abilities cannot be nullified by opponent's card effect. Very important, especially if you're fighting against Time Dragons. The Eon does nullify and bounce you back, so it's very important for you to have anti-nullifies. But however, this deck doesn't really have a problem because the Sync can always just evolve on top and making it miss a target. So that's a thing. They just play this in case of rogue matchups. 2 is fine. Also, is a pre-need second ability. At the start of the attack phase, if this card 6k or greater, for this turn, all Mystic Knights on the field gain was extra 1 critical. So similar to the original Sync's buff, even if you evolve him or he leaves the field, the extra 1 critical stays for the entire turn. So this card is very nice because it does give you the extra buff before you evolve into Asagi or the brand new Sync. So yeah, 2 copies is fine. 3 is if you're going against meta decks. The most important spell is 4 copies of Droplet of Temptation. So this is your searcher for your item and your Sync. A really good card because it does allow you to search out for Sync. It is similar to Astro's search for cross and an item. So you pay 1 gauge and 1 life, put up to 1 Mystic Knight monster with Sync in its card name and 1 Mystic Knight items from your deck into your hand. So it basically tutors whatever you need. Whichever Sync you do not have in your hand, you just call it out. So which means you can call either one of these most of the time. You definitely want to have your formation like these, like one of these, so that you gain double attack for the rest of the turn. And each to gain extra critical. And if you already have these, you can always add extra Sync because this card is just so good in the hand. So yeah, a very important card because this deck also is one of those decks that cannot function without a weapon. There are a lot of spells that require you to have some weapons as conditions. So yeah, 4 copies of this is a must because you definitely want to have your weapon and Sync set up during your first turn. Next, 4 copies of OG spell, Wings of Revolt. The reason why this card is still very important and used is because of its flexibility and its speed. It could be used during your turn or your opponent's turn, which is very important because you want to have cards that can be countered anytime. It's a counter spell that allows you to draw a card and counter. For this turn, all Missing Knights on the field gains defense by 6k. So it's really important because one thing you want to note about this guy, right, is you want to cast your spells after this guy's entered the field. So usually I'll keep this in my hand until I summon this guy. Then I'll cast Wings of Revolt so that I'll be able to activate its ability to deal some burn damage. Yep, and also Asagi is requires to be 9k attack power before allowing you to plus when he attacks. When she attacks, so most importantly is you want to have a Wings of Revolt so that she gains that 9k before she attacks, otherwise you won't be able to gain that pluses. So yeah, Wings of Revolt is mostly a key card that will be used quite late into the battle phase, so do take note. And also it could be used both players' turns, so it could be used during your opponent's turn to add extra defense, during your turn to just give you those awesome abilities for you to plus. So yeah, 4 copies of Wings of Revolt because it's such a flexible card. I highly recommend you to play highly flexible cards at 4 because you can be cast during your opponent's turn and your turn and they never be dead. Unlike cards like Nice One, which only activates during your turn, perhaps playing 4 will be too much. But cards that has extra flexibility like these with counter abilities, definitely 4 is alright in the deck. Next, 4 copies of Cecrops Lecture. Similar to Wings of Revolt, it is a very flexible card since you'll be able to use it during your turn and your opponent's turn. 4 copies is never a dead card in this deck. So you may only cast this card after you cast a spell this turn. So it's really easy because this deck, more than half of its spell. So it has counter ability, check top 2 of the deck, 1 to hand, 1 to gauge. You can only cast this card once per turn. So it's really good because it does allow you to turbo through the top 2 cards of the deck, choose whoever you need and charge 1 gauge. It's a really nice ability to check top 2 in case you get to dig into cards that you really need, which means it speeds up the deck. And a powerful deck is a deck that can speed itself up, and fortunately this is a card that speeds up any deck. Next, 3 copies of Nice One, Gaga. So Nice One is still a very important card in Magic World and mostly seen play in Magic World right nowadays in 3s due to the fact that games end very fast and it can only be cast once per turn. This card costs to pay 1 gauge to draw 2 cards, pretty self-explanatory and a really good card. It's basically Power of Greed. Next up, 2 copies of Flame of Memories. This is kind of like your nice one, but except you have to discard 1 Mystic Knight. And this fulfillment, the only reason why I play 2 copies of this is even though it does play draw me 3 cards, there's one single problem, which is you have to drop a Mystic Knight from your hand. And the problem is, Mystic Knight is not an attribute on all your cards. The only cards that has Mystic Knight attribute is your weapon and your monsters. And you do not have a lot of those to spare. Unfortunately, if you'll be able to discard any Mystic Knight spells, this card would be awesome and I'll play at 3. However, the fact that it requires you to discard a monster or item makes it kind of irrelevant sometimes, and it tends to be a dead draw when I play at 3. So 2 works really well, because this card is kind of situational at times, so 2 is alright. Most of the time, I do use my search spell to search out an extra weapon or extra thing and discard it with its cost. So 2 is never a dead card in my hand, but 3 might actually clock. Now, brand new rare card from the latest booster. So the Climax booster gave us the last song. Hopefully it isn't the last song, but its ability is really good. You may only cast card if you have 2 or more Mystic Knight monsters on your field and you have a Mystic Knight item equipped. So this is the reason why this card is very important, and this is basically the card that sets up everything. You must have an item equipped to activate this card. Its draw power is similar to Astro Dragons. So charge 2 gauge, gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. A really powerful plus engine. However, you do need to have a bot set up a little bit. This is not a problem because we do have a lot of base draw power. Then this gives us extra draw power. So 3 copies of the last song does work really well in the deck. So yeah, it's fine. Next, Lunatic Circus. I really love the artwork of this. It has a cast cost of 1 life and has 2 abilities. Choose and use one of the following abilities. You can only cast this card once per turn. And also, out of 2 abilities, it has 1 counter ability. So its first ability is put up to 2 Mystic Knights monster or item with different card names from your drop zone into your hand. So you could either take 2 different monsters or 2 different items if you play it. But those 2 cards have to be different cards. So it's good because one single card allows you to fetch 2 cards. It's kind of like a nice one, but you 2-box from the drop zone. So it just basically 2-box extra things that you have dropped in the previous turn, or an extra guitar for you to discard with cost, like the draw power that's previously mentioned. And second ability is really good because it gives you extra attack. So counter ability, call up to 1 Mystic Knight from your hand or drop zone by paying its call cost. This way, if you have extra things in the drop zone, you can just call it. Or if you just want to call extra things from your hand as an attacker, you could do it. Most of the time I use it to revive from the drop zone because I do turbo a lot of cards in the drop zone and they kind of serve as 2-box later in the battle phase. Now 2 copies another new spell, Nightmare Cage. Nightmare Cage is really good because right now, if you guys know, Time Dragons has this spell called Chronos Sin Blockend, and it basically ends your battle phase after the 3rd attack. So this card is really important to counter Time Dragons because its ability to stand and allow you to attack on the final phase is really key right now. So its cost of 1 gauge, 1 life and resend all Mystic Knights, so it basically gives you extra attack, really cool. And it's a fire spell to boot, so if you combo it with this, you'll be able to do extra damage to your opponent. So it's really good card. And 2 copies is fine, 3 copies may be a little too much. It's mostly used as a finisher or a precaution against decks that end the whole phase, like Time Dragons or Dimension Dragons. Next, 2 copies of Gates of Transmigration. It is an upgrade form of another spell that causes 5 gauge. So it has a cost of 5 gauge, and this card cast cost is reused by 1 different fire in your drop zone. So it could be fire monsters or fire spells. Yes, this has to be a different name and it reduces the cost. Really easy, and most of the time I cast this for free. So its counter ability is return up to 2 cards from your opponent's field to hand. So either bounce 2 or rest 2 cards on your opponent's field. So this card gives you a little bit more control for free. A really powerful card, and it can be used during your opponent's turn and your turn. If you want to play 3 copies of it, I think it's fine because it's such a flexible card. It could be used anytime to break down your opponent's board or just rest their monsters just in case they can't be destroyed or bounced. So yeah, 2 copies of Gates of Transmigration. Next, 1 tag-in copy of Deep Blaze Singularity. The reason why I still play 1 copy of it is because it is a different name. You can only cast card during attack your opponent's turn. You can pay 1 gauge, 95 attack, and then if you have a Mystic Knight on the field, all cards your opponent's field drops minus 3k. So with cards like Sing, which have a base 6k, it will boost itself to 9k, and your opponent loses 3k. So in a way, it becomes a 12k defender if you do the math right. So casting this 1 single card makes your Sing a 12k defender. Since he's in the center with counter attack, is extremely tanky. Next, 1 copy of Flame Quartet. This card is also a really useful card that you might want to play it too. It's basically just a gauge adder that gives you a guaranteed chance to cast it every single turn since it's able to return back to hand. Since I don't really have a problem with having fire spells in my hand, I don't really play so many of these. Just 1 copy similar to the previous spell, just for an extra count of fire. And the last spell we play is 4 copies of Selector of Sin. Still an excellent card because it allows you to recycle some of your fire cards, especially Wings of Revolt, since that's the card that you always want so that you will be able to counter during your turn or your opponent's turn. So you may only cast this card you have Missing Knight on the field, counter ability, charge 2 gauge. And for this turn, all Missing Knight on the field gains was 3k attack, 3k defense. It's a buff. And if your drop zone has 3 or more different fire types, put up to 1 fire spell from your drop zone other than this card, Selector of Sin. You may only cast this card once per turn, so very important card because it allows you to fetch back any of the spells that you need. So depending on the situation, you could either take back cards that gives you more control, gives you a bit of resending power in the drop zone, or most importantly, if you already have those cards, you can always pick back Wings or Revolt, which is a good card for sustain. So yeah, there are lots of choices for you to select. If you need draw power, you can also pick back draw power. So yeah, 4 copies because it can be cast during your turn or opponent's turn, which makes this card an extremely flexible card. And finally, for the items, we play 2 copies of Nebuta Gennari. So this is the item from the previous set, Perfected Time Ruler. It's the equipped cost of pulling 2 fire cards from the drop zone and paying 1 gauge. So it's a really good card because it's pretty much immune to removal. Destruction or bounce prevention isn't really huge right now. So having souls on the card prevents it from going away that easily. So this card can attack even if you have a Missing Knight in the center. All Missing Knights on the field cannot be returned to hand, and their soul cannot be dropped by opponent's card effect. Really neat ability, gives you a bit of immunity against soul dropping, which is huge because Missing Knights do stack out a lot of soul, especially with the brand new sync. And preventing bounce is also very nice. And finally, its last ability, if you call a Missing Knight, its gauge is reduced by 1. Really good because most of the sync you call is actually quite expensive, which is 2 gauge, and with this card, most syncs only cost 1 gauge. And a really cool thing is this card gets double attack thanks to sync, because sync gives all Missing Knights on the field double attack. Really awesome weapon. This is a really good common weapon with many awesome abilities, and I really like it. I think 2 copies is a good number because we do play a lot of draw power and we have an item searcher that we play at 4. So playing 2 is just right so they can add other cards into your deck. So I hope you guys enjoy my deck profile on the newest Magic World Mystic Knights deck. Please leave a comment down below on which deck you would like to see next, and smash that like if you want the video to be out 50 times faster. Until next time, keep on buddy fighting!